Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Call of the Night, Season 1, Episode 7. Great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. I think it's interesting where we start with Ko kind of worried about hopefully he doesn't run into anyone that he knows. And you would think all the times you're out and about at night, it kind of makes sense why. I mean, it's surprising you haven't run into anyone, especially any teachers or anything, but maybe they are just in by this point in night. And the same thing, maybe most of the people at his school aren't the rambunctious, rebellious type to be hanging out that late. Or maybe it is a thing of they are, and just Ko just happens to have not run into them in this time. Because maybe it's the section of town he typically roams isn't where they operate. Maybe that's what it is. But he does run into someone he knows because he hears someone call his name. He's like, oh crap, please don't let it be. What should I do? Should I run? But he turns around and it's Kyo Sumi. And she wanted to thank him. You know, what he declared to her last episode of I'll make you a vampire if you want me to. She's like, that did help me a lot. It took a lot of weight off my shoulder. It made her feel and I even said that last episode that even if she's not fully sure if he's really committed and willing to do it, but that promise is somewhere in the back of her mind, and it made her feel it's almost like this interesting thing of that out will always be there, a viable option if, Ko ends up becoming a vampire. But I think there's a part of her that believes with his determination that he will become one. She also talked about the fact that she's in the same boat when she runs into a coworker or sees a coworker or whatever at out and about. She immediately turns around and runs away from them. So she has that same energy as Ko. And at least in this interesting conversation, because she had thanked them and then eventually left, it got Ko thinking. He's like, it's interesting because what's this feeling I'm feeling? Because I guess it was almost like gratitude, because it's not something he's used to, even though he says I've been thanked a lot, especially because he's I help out at school, but he also talked about how it's that him helping out at school isn't genuine. And I guess you could make the argument, because he's basically saying he has ulterior motives in that regard, that there are selfish reasons why he helps out, so he doesn't feel that full gratitude because it wasn't out of a selfless desire that he helped out. So I don't know if that's supposed to be indicative of just at school you're supposed to that's kind of a creed and honor of the school to operate in that regard of you help people out and stuff like that. So it's more it's what's expected of you, it's obligated of you to help people out. So he's just kind of because that's what's expected of me. Or is it more of a situation of he's getting something out of it? Because he even says even with the Kyo Sumi thing, even that was kind of not fully selfless, because even then he still did have his reasons. It wasn't I had no reason to help you. It's I had my personal reasons to help you. So I don't know. I just thought that was kind of an interesting conversation. And I'm about the school help and being thanked. I'm curious why he felt what were those ulterior motives in a way of why him helping out wasn't genuine, and why he didn't feel the same way getting thanked at school versus being thanked by Kyo Sumi. But either way, he ends up meeting a young girl who appears to be a high school girl named Sari. I have to be very careful saying that name because multiple times when I was saying that name out loud, it activated a certain device in my certain robotic voice was activated on a device in my room, so I had to be careful about that. But yeah, said device is now buried under my pillow and my cover, so I don't activate it, hopefully. Either way, changes and all that aside, I just felt that was kind of a funny thing to kind of reference. But he meets her, and her whole shtick is she was turning down a guy and comes and approaches Ko, and she talks about the fact is that she actually kind of leans into it, she kind of hangs around so people will kind of approach her, because it's all about the time, and it's just kind of the little bit of the exchange she kind of likes. But she's talking about how everything's kind of boring, which Ko's interesting. He's for the first time, this is the first time, he's discovering so much at a young age about certain facets of the nightlife. And he's that sounds like a very dangerous part of nightlife. It is. You could find yourself with the wrong person in a very, very dangerous situation. But I was maybe she's just living life on an edge to some extent, but we'll get to that soon enough. And then she's showing off her bra and stuff, and then Ko's yeah, that's not good. And she's yeah, it's funny you would say that because your mouth and your eyes aren't matching, because you're sure as hell ogling me. So she takes off with his drink, and I was like, I think it's kind of weird that you're following her to, I don't know if it's a part of town you go to, but it's like definitely away from the bright lights of the city and away from people. But then like she reveals herself because he thinks like, oh, she's a kindred spirit like me, like things have kind of become boring, can't do what she wants to do. And he's like, oh, I feel that, like we're the same. And then in that moment she goes over to him. I was like, she's not what I think she is. Turns out she's a vampire. But before she could get a bite, here comes Nazuna coming to protect her prey or her property, and immediately slices off her arm. And so we get a look at the regenerative property of vampires. Like she's immediately able to kind of reattach her arm, picked it up and slapped it back on. But the reason why this is happening because word has gotten out about Nazuna hanging out with her like random human kid, and it's like, right, like you're hanging around this kid without the prospects of ever turning him, which is so interesting because Nazuna is kind of letting things like fly by. It's just like let things happen. Let what happens because they are completely unaware that that's Ko's thing of like, no, I want to become a vampire. But the whole thing is like they can't let some random human know the truth about things, which begs the question, what does that mean about Akira? It's like, well, I guess we got to keep it hush hush about Akira. I guess they don't know about that because obviously she's only hung around all three of them. Him having like a regular human friend, and eventually that might circle back into the plot. But like the fact is that there's two humans running around that know about vampires existing, Akira and Sumi. But the plan is to eventually make Sumi into a vampire if the need comes around, if Ko becomes one. We don't know where Akira stands in all of this. She seems perfectly content with just staying a human, but she's in that same mentality where you could easily see her shifting in the same direction of Ko wanting to become a vampire because of like the boringness of life and kind of the freedom of the night and stuff. One of the other vampires comes and snatches him up. And when we kind of meet all the other characters, I'm like, wow, this is most of the cast from the intro. And I was like, I would have never guessed that almost everyone in that group is a vampire. The only humans that we're aware of is Akira. For sure, the other guy in the intro, it's unclear whether he's also a vampire or whether he's a human. Even if he's a human, that's only 3 humans out of like the rest being vampires, which I wasn't expecting. And they even crossed my mind. Because I talked about it, I went into the series not really knowing what to expect. And so I assume like, hey, these cast of characters are people that Ko and Nazuna interact with throughout the city at night, like nighttime life. Like that's what I thought it was. Would have never expected there to be other vampires. I'd also brought it up too. I was curious about what the supernatural world is like in this world. We're meeting vampires, but are there other supernaturals as well, or is it just vampires? I'm curious. Like I said, Ko got kidnapped and he got taken, and their plan is like, hey, if we can't turn you into a vampire, we're going to kill you. Which I love that at least 3 I guess you can make the argument Sari kind of made her move as well, but so you got at least 4 that actively made an attempt on trying to woo Ko. It was Midori, Nico, and the first one that grabbed him up and took him to the others. So it's like, oh, Nico's putting on her move of like, oh yeah, you must like someone like me. I might be, oh, you're just my type or something like that. But he kind of has no interest in her. Midori tried to play the cute angle of like, oh my God, like, can I sit right beside you? Even though generally they're like, you typically want to, hey, like, be talking to the person diagonally, but like Midori puts her position to be like, oh, I guess I'm not your type. And they're like, oh, look at her being manipulative. The whole point is to make you feel bad, where it's like, even if you don't really fully mean it, you'll subconsciously be like, no, I'm not saying you're not my type. And it inadvertently kind of being like, oh, you kind of are my type. And it's like in that moment, she'll have you snared. But he kind of says, well, no, you're not. And it's like, wait, what? And even Midori's like, that's the first time I've ever gotten to know. He tried to backpedal it by being like, I mean, I'm not saying you're not my type. It's just I don't really know what my type is. This is all kind of new to me. So I don't even know like what my ideal woman is. I won't really know until it happens. So I can't really give you an answer what is my ideal type and what isn't, because I don't even know. I love that they were having this whole conversation about virgin, and he was like, hey, why are you guys having this argument under the assumption that I'm a virgin? They're like, wait, you're not a virgin? He's like, well, of course I'm a virgin. They're like, oh God, phew, don't scare us like that. Because I think it's almost because like, why are you so young and not a virgin if that was the case, I think. or maybe they felt like, oh, our radar would be off, but it's probably more like a, no, you're too young to be like to not be a virgin. I think that might be more applicable with what's going on. But yeah, like Seri and Natsuna are still like duking it out, and it becomes that conversation of like, right, how Natsuna has never, been serious about the whole turning someone thing, even though it's like, right, it's kind of on her. Cause I guess it's a thing of, maybe it's like, well, I guess that's the only reason to hang around a human repeatedly is for the intents and purpose of eventually turning them. Because it's like, right, you move from person to person, you find new food all the time, it's kind of the thing. But if you're hanging around the same person over and over again, it's like, oh, you might like that person and you must want to turn them. So it's like, that's why they felt the need to intervene, because like, hey, you're getting close to a human, and they know Natsuna. It's like whole, like, she's never shown any interest in turning anyone, so that's why they felt like, for their sake and the sake of just their community, it's like, we have no choice but to intervene. So it's like, hey, either we turn this human, so pick one of us to fall in love with, or because they talk about like the whole thing about, because the whole thing is, Ko reiterates the whole vampires having pretty faces and stuff, and oh, like Nico was saying that they're the popular type, which even he's like, yo, are you saying like Nazuna isn't popular, like with like that, her attractiveness? And they're like, well, the thing is, she's unintentionally popular, because them, like, by design and the point of like seducing people, they kind of have a natural state of popularity. They put themselves in a position to be popular. It kind of comes with the territory of being a vampire. But Nazuna has never leaned into the popularity. She kind of is very anti-popular. I think that kind of coincides with like her not really being around people. She gets the food she wants, but we don't see her hang out with people on a regular basis like she does Ko. It's also the thing of like, she's cool by extension of regards of like, she just naturally is cool, even though she doesn't try to be. She's just cool by her nature and just very pretty, and has a very pretty and neat aesthetic of her own that just comes natural to her without her trying. And I think that's also a little annoying in its own capacity from people on the outside as well. But yeah, like Seri was talking to Nazuna during their fight and was like, right, you know what this means, you're putting him in danger. And she's like, I get it. And they're like, no, you don't. Like, you have no intention of having no one that you've chosen to make a family. She's like, well, I have. It's like, oh, you have. Oh, I get it. So that kid was just a plaything. But Nazuna's beating around the bush. She's like, no, it's actually like, she's trying to say like, no, like Ko is the one, but she's too embarrassed to admit it. So when she does show up, it's just when Ko had just talked to the others. He was like, but I want to become a vampire. And they're like, wait, what? Once again, they were under the impression like he had no intentions, but it's like, no, he's the one actively pursuing to become a vampire. Nazuna's the one that really isn't putting forth the full effort to kind of make it happen. She's kind of letting things fly. Like, what happens with Ko. So Nazuna shows up just when he was like, hey, I'm trying to get Nazuna to fall. I'm trying to fall in love with Nazuna. And then she gets embarrassed. And they're like, Nico's like, she still does that thing where she gets embarrassed by romance talk. It's like, yep, she still isn't over that. So it becomes that conversation of, well, what are we going to do about this situation? It's like, you've never been one for wanting to make an offspring, and that other vampire kind of interferes. Because that whole conversation of, you should just say thank you and grab his shoulder and let it be the one you can lean on and you confess to him and stuff like that, kind of setting the mood. But Ko's actually the one that kind of lays it out, because he's like, right, Nazuna says my blood is tasty and I want to become a vampire, and that those are two sides of this agreement that we have, and that's how we end up where we are. And it's like, oh, it's kind of an agreement. There's no romance in that or whatever. But Ko talks about how Nazuna's exact words were like, you can fall in love, do whatever you want to. I'm like, I'm not gonna actively have you like make you fall in love with me, but if you fall in love with me on your own, that's on you. Which is kind of like, oh, and the other two vampires had the conversation where they're like, basically Nazuna is so embarrassed about the romantic talk, but at the end of the day, what it comes down to is, it's an unspoken rule. Once again, it'll become clear and it'll become known how he feels about her without it turning into like a conversation, them actively talking about, actively pursuing it. Just let it, it's like, just let it happen when it happens. It'll be kind of a surprise. And the way Natsuna puts it is kind of like, oh, it'll be kind of like a shotgun wedding. It's kind of like, yeah, like blam, kind of be a surprise for both of us. There's actually something kind of endearing and sweet about that, kind of being like, rather than putting all this effort to make it happen, just kind of let it happen. I mean, it makes sense too with like the spontaneity and enjoyment they have with the nightlife. It kind of fits Nazuna and Ko's whole dynamic. It feels like that would be the approach to it, to take the very shotgun wedding, like spur of the moment type of vibe. It feels befitting. I also love Ko's takeaway too, is like, unlike Nazuna, who is all about the lewd talk but can't handle the romance angle, all the other vampires are the opposite. They can handle the romance talk. In fact, they want to have the romance talk, but they can't handle the lewd talk. So it's like, it's funny and ironic in the end. But yeah, like Nico's like, right, we're kind of letting this slide. Because she's never been like, they've never been on the best of terms with Nazuna because of her approach and kind of like her solidarity away from like, I don't know, solidarity isn't the word I'm looking for. The solitudeness that she kind of has away from all of the vampires, that they kind of don't always mesh well with her. But they're like, fine, for now, we won't be kidnapping Ko anymore, and we'll kind of let him be. Ko's like, don't worry, I'll become a vampire no matter how many years it takes. And they all kind of look at him. He's like, what? Which even I'm not 100% sure how you're supposed to interpret that. I don't know if it's a thing of, oh, you're willing to put in years, or is that supposed to be a subtle thing of, no, dude, we're not going to wait years. If she doesn't turn you, or you don't get turned in a certain amount of time frame, like it's got to be done relatively soon. We're not going to sit around waiting for years. Or like I said, or was it just them being like, wow, you're really dedicated to this? You said like, even if it takes years, you don't care how long, you'll make it happen. So I'm curious which perspective they have on it. I'm also curious about the Siri of it all, because we didn't cut back to like, we just know like, I guess Nazuna said what she needed to say to Siri to allow her to kind of escape and come here. But like the last time we saw Siri was when Nazuna was having that conversation, kind of beating around the bush, trying to say what she was trying to say. I guarantee you Siri didn't get an actual answer out of it. It was most likely like Siri piecing it together herself of, oh, it's the boy that you're into. Oh, okay, and you're still you, and she doesn't have all the details about it, but or maybe Nazuna kind of opened up a little bit to her and felt comfortable enough because it's only them there versus talking about it in front of everyone else. One's embarrassing and the other one's ultra embarrassing. So I don't know. It's gonna be interesting to see where things go from here now that Ko knows there's other vampires, and what his potential interactions will be with them, what the aftermath of this episode sets up for things going forward. We're kind of in the last we're roughly basically at the back half of the season. So it's going to be interesting to see where things kind of go from here on that front. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.